So, spoilers. People hate them. You'll often hear people say that something has been ruined for them because they heard a spoiler, which, I feel is a bit overdramatic, but most people have a general understanding of why this is, so I don't feel the need to explain why people hate spoilers in the first place, but I would like to give my take and explain why I myself do not care about getting spoiled on anything. Okay, this isn't quite the same thing as me saying spoilers don't matter, because they do, and I don't want to say that people are wrong for caring so much about spoilers, but, I think examination of the topic actually reveals something very interesting about entertainment as a whole. So here's what I think. The crux of this topic actually revolves around an important distinction between two very different ways of enjoying media. So I will define these two forms of enjoyment as experience and content. Okay, experiences as it sounds. It's the experience of watching a movie, being at a concert or a tournament, the emotions that are associated with that. And not knowing what's going to happen is a huge part of experience because it directs your thought process. You have fun predicting what's going to happen next. You get invested, you get surprised, and, the experience those exciting emotions. Content is the actual material of the media. A movie is exactly the same regardless of if you know what's coming or not. No amount of spoilers will change the actual content of the film. So appreciating content is examining the actual material of a film or whatever, enjoying its tone, its presentation, its organization and structure, how well it's written. All of these things you can appreciate regardless of whether or not you were spoiled. So knowing what's going to happen has a direct impact on your ability to enjoy media through experience, but it doesn't really impact your ability to enjoy media for its content. You see what I'm getting at? So, to say that spoilers don't matter because a piece of media is the same either way isn't entirely accurate. But it depends on what you're seeking to get out of the media. When I say I don't care about spoilers, it doesn't mean that I don't see how spoilers can ruin someone's experience. It instead just means that I don't give a fuck about experience. I only care about content. Now, it's absolutely true that lots of forms of entertainment are specifically designed to be enjoyed through experience. Like live concerts, where you're mostly hearing songs you're already familiar with. You just get the rush of the mob mentality that makes you feel more excited by being in this high-energy, hive-mindy kind of group setting. Even a form of entertainment as simple as memes on the internet are based in experience, first and foremost, and comedy performances and all sorts of shit. So, I do enjoy all of these things. I'm not some fucking alien that can't feel fun or humor. I do enjoy consuming content in this way. But what I care about far more is writing and artistry. Fun is fun, but it's fleeting and shorthand. I value fun, but I'm genuinely passionate about content, about digging deeper and deeper into a piece of media and fully appreciating everything that it does. Sure, a concert is fun for a short time, but I'd much rather listen to a masterpiece of a song over and over, picking apart every fantastic idea that it has to offer. I value my understanding of media, my intelligence and knowledge on the subjects, and, growing and learning. So I want to amass more and more knowledge and wisdom on the topics of writing and analysis and game design, all sorts of shit. So I want my opinions to be as educated as possible. And because of this, I dislike experience, because I believe that judging a piece of media by experience is a flawed metric for appraising something's quality. Now, why is this? Well, there's two main reasons, I think. It's extremely easy to manipulate people's emotions in media if they aren't wary to it. Just because something makes you emotional when you watch it and when you're taking it seriously doesn't necessarily mean that the writing was difficult or really required any talent to create. It's very easy for fast emotional reactions to cloud your judgment in positive ways or negative ways. Beyond that, the most important reason why experience is a flawed way to judge media, it's fucking random. It's super fucking random, okay? It's totally outside the control of the creator. You know, sure, they can try to manipulate you into thinking this way or that way or liking this character or that character, and they can try to make you feel the way that they want you to feel, but ultimately it's the consumer who controls their own reactions, their own thoughts and experiences. I mean, people like to say, you'll hear this a bunch, but people like to say that knowing spoilers ahead of time impacts your perceptions going into, like, a movie or something. But that's, while that is true, that's just a silly observation, because fucking anything impacts your perceptions going in. Literal random chance can impact your perception going in. There have been instances where people I've known, or like Let's Players I've followed, who like all the same kinds of stories and characters, like play through the first Danganronpa, for example. One person hated Yasuhiro for being an idiot and like wasting people's time, but they loved Asahina for, you know, being cute and funny as an idiot. And the other person, the other Let's Player, similar opinions, you know, similar taste and things, but exactly the opposite. They just happened to decide, oh, you know, they hated Asahina for being an idiot and wasting people's time, but loved Hiro and thought he was hilarious. You know, rationally, they have the same reasoning behind their decisions. It's just the random chance circumstances behind how they thought about each character, you know, initially when they started watching them. And then the confirmation bias sets in, where as soon as you have a negative impression of, like, the one character, that continues building and building. You're only paying attention to things that confirm that opinion. You know, so many opinions on how you feel about something while experiencing it are based on nothing but pure coincidence. That you happen to think of something positively or negatively. And then, you know, confirmation bias does the rest. If I happen to go into a film with a subtle bad attitude, I can pay attention to things that just annoy me, as opposed to paying attention to things that might impress me. The best example of this, the first time I ever played Final Fantasy VII, it was many years after it came out, I knew that it was hailed as a masterpiece, and because of that, I had a subtle bad attitude where I was basically, like, waiting for the game to impress me. Sitting back, not really getting invested into it, just waiting for it to impress me. I wasn't getting invested in the characters, the setting. I was just, you know, I was looking at everything from the mindset of, I'm not impressed. You know, even though if I keep that mindset and view everything as unimpressive, there's no fucking chance. I can view anything as unimpressive. You know, it was only after re-examination and looking at the content and not the experience I had of initially playing through it that I was able to appreciate the game. You know, sure, spoilers impact your mindset going in, absolutely. But everything going on in your life and your brain and whatever the fuck you happen to be thinking about also impacts your mindset going in. Experience is a fucking worthless and inconsistent way to judge something's quality, since you as the viewer have far more control over your experience than the creator of the film or game could ever possibly have. You know, it's not like they made a shitty product because you controlled your own experience and had a shitty experience. You know, that wasn't the fucking product or the creator's fault. They have no control over that. Now, I reconsume a lot of media that I find interesting, and I want to examine it in greater depth. I watch movies I love over and over and over, you know, over the course of periods of time, not necessarily back to back, but my eventual thoughts on a piece of media are usually completely different from my thoughts consuming it for the first time. You know, I have a real grasp of what I perceive to be the identity of the film, and, you know, I start to see every single part of the film as a collective of, you know, part of the collective whole, you know, all contributing to this overarching identity and vision and theme or whatever. When I rewatch movies, each scene changes from something that originally was holding my suspense for what was coming next, and instead becomes like a non-linear component of the film's greater purpose, you know, in my head. The content of the film becomes non-linear in my mind. You know, over time, something I've thought about for a long time has gradually shifted from just being a collection of, to just being a collection of all my thoughts surrounding its content, everything that I've thought about and rationalized and analyzed. I often can't even remember at all. I can't even remember what my feelings or opinions were the first time I ignorantly went through a piece of media that eventually became one of my favorite things ever. I cannot the slightest memory of, like, what I felt the first time watching through even just a recent movie like Parasite. I don't fucking remember what I felt like the first time watching through it. I don't remember what that experience was like. The way I think about it now, this is what the film has become to me. The culmination of all my thoughts around it. It's just content. I can't even recall the experience anymore. So what about things like pacing and moment-to-moment entertainment value? Well, of course, those matter a great deal as well. There's plenty of technical elements that impact how enjoyable a film is to watch through, which, is actually even more important on repeated viewings where you already know what's going to happen, because it's much more easy to get bored of something that isn't paced well if you already know what's coming. If a film can only be enjoyed when you don't know what's going to happen, I think that's an indication it's probably not a very good movie. Because you're getting the entertainment value almost entirely from just your own imagination and not actually the film's legitimate content. I mean, I think it's impossible to judge the quality of media based upon your reaction to it. Knowing how many different factors outside the creator's control will influence said reaction. I'd say that I'd care more about spoilers if I was just watching a media for fun. But the truth is that I do have the most fun when I'm analyzing and breaking things down. I mean, that's just my personal taste, but that's what I enjoy more. That's far more powerful to me than being surprised by something that I didn't expect in a movie. Now, there are definitely a lot of real creatives, real artists, who try to express their artistry through manipulating their audience's expectations and trying to control their experience. For example, a game like Undertale relies on the player playing through it in a certain way and then surprising them with a twist that it's criticizing the very decisions that they're making without even thinking about it. It's criticizing for example, like the demo of Undertale, where you would go through, and before the game explains that you can be non-violent and approach combat in a non-violent fashion, you have a random encounter with an enemy, and like the natural instinct of a player is to just fight and kill the monster. But then it turns it around and says, you had the ability to handle the situation in a non-violent fashion, and it's sort of like making you think back and criticizing like your natural instinct and how the games that you're familiar with have made you view these random encounters in such a detached fashion. It for example, Undertale has after you complete it on the pacifist route, then you play like the genocide route, and it's constantly criticizing the fact that you are undoing the lives that you saved in your pacifist route, because now that you want to play through more content in the game, you're willing to then kill all the characters that you had previously cared about. So it's like this sort of meta-esque commentary where it relies on you, playing through it a specific way and then turning around and then criticizing or making you think, at least, about why you made those decisions in the first place. That's the point of it. So I can appreciate the idea of what they were trying to do without having to fall for it myself. I can see what it's doing. It continues to have the same meaning even after you're aware of the trap that they're setting, because the entire game feeds into this idea that you don't have to continue hurting characters for the sake of getting more content out of the game, but you're willing to throw away your empathy for them as people in order to do so. Like the initial slap in the face may require you to have not been spoiled on the game's true intentions beforehand, but the message and the execution of the message remains the same. It's still thought-provoking and powerful stuff. I mean, that's about it. I care far more about that long-term understanding that I eventually achieve by continuing to examine and study media that I love. I care about that far more than I care about the temporary entertainment value that I get from the experience of not knowing what's going to happen. Sure, you could argue that I could just experience something blind to start with and then start analyzing it and breaking it down. To start building up that appreciation and understanding of its content overall. You're absolutely right. I could enjoy both, but the point I was making is that I don't need to have the experience be untainted. I mean, especially since there's no such thing as a pure, as intended experience anyways, since the creator can't control my thoughts directly, but regardless, it's not that I actively seek out spoilers to remove the experience part. It's just that I put so little value, personally, to the experience that I just don't care about getting spoiled. I just don't care. I understand that this is simply what I value when consuming media, and a lot of other people do genuinely care about their experience because they want to have fun, first and foremost, and that's totally fine, this is just my explanation and identifying the difference between experience and content is something that I think is important for, anyone. So, that's about it. See ya.